Well, well, greetings and salutations to the 310 tribe, wherever you might be tonight. We're on a little bit early, and I'm going to do a short 1 hour discussion tonight with a good friend, Pastor Mike. But before I bring him on, I am going to be speaking at Guthrie, Oklahoma on the 26th of July. I think it's the First Southern Baptist Church there. And if you live in the Oklahoma area, I'd love to have you. And I know Pastor Greg will love to have you out there as well. So look forward to seeing the fine folk there. And then in August, I think the 14th, the Friday the 14th, I think is a Friday the 14th. It's going to be in Roseburg, Oregon. And I will be there with Roseburg Christian Fellowship. And looking forward to hanging out with the fine folk up in Oregon too as well. So tonight, we're going to be talking about Trump's betrayal. I want to give a quick shout out to all the moderators. I always forget to do that. You guys are awesome. Thank you very much. If you can just limit, we won't really have time to do a lot of questions tonight, maybe 15 minutes of questions. So kind of just pick through the best ones, if that's possible, that are related, as long as they're related to the topic tonight. So tonight's politics, geopolitics, Israel, Trump, these deals that are going on. So any of those kinds of topics would be totally fine for tonight. And I think that's it. With that said, I'm going to bring on Pastor Mike. Pastor Mike, how are you?
Pete, good to see you, brother. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, the last time you were on, we had a great time. And I was serious. Like, I want to have you on. I'd have you on like once a month if you want to. We just got to make sure that we do that, like, and stay consistent with it. So,
brother, I am at your service. Anytime you want to chat, just holler.
And you're in Ohio, correct?
I'm in Lima, Ohio, West Central. We're strategically located, I tell people, Pete, about 2 hours south of Detroit, 2 hours north of Cincinnati, 2 hours east of Indianapolis, and about an hour and a half west of Columbus, Ohio. So right in the heart of it all.
Right in the heart of it all. Well, right on. I know there's some folk out there that are in Ohio. So if you're anywhere near the Lima vicinity, your church is Calvary Chapel?
Yeah, Calvary Chapel of Lima. Sundays and Wednesdays and all the ministries. Check the website. And yeah, if you're close, we've got people that drive an hour to fellowship with us. So it's getting harder and harder. This is a common testimony, Pete. You've probably heard it. It's getting harder and harder for people to find an ecclesia to fellowship with. It's actually preaching, teaching, living the truth, talking about the things that you talk about all the time, weaving that into our normal fellowship conversations. So yeah, join us if you're in the area.
Well, tonight we're going to be talking about President Trump, the peace deal that's going on, the Abraham Accords, the current conflict with Iran. All of those things kind of touch each other. And I'll start off and say that I heard Glenn Beck talk about this earlier, and I thought, man, that is one of the best ways I've ever heard him. I've listened to Glenn for, 20 years. And I don't agree with his theology because of his Latter-day Saint faith and all that kind of stuff. But
right.
I think his ability to connect the dots and stuff is unmatched in our day and age with regard to a lot of the journalists and stuff that are out there. There's some good ones out there.
I agree.
But he said something to the effect of, and I'm paraphrasing him here, there's two things that can both be true, and you don't have to agree with either, and one could be terrible and the other could be really good, but they're both true. And in one instance, he said that Donald Trump has done 20 years worth of work in about 2 years of his second administration in terms of fighting fraud, shutting the border down, stopping the flow of illegal immigrants, deporting the folks that have overstayed their visas or abusing the system, like the H-1B visas. He's waged war basically on the cartels. He's doing all of this stuff, and not just that, but he's signing stuff into legislation or into executive orders, banning men from women's sports, pushing for the big beautiful bill. And then this is a bit of a holdover from his first administration, was the Abraham Accords, which got postponed by the 2020 election, well, by COVID and the 2020 election. And obviously the results are, are history at this point, but seems to me very laser focused on this. And so in one hand, he has done 20 years worth of work in about 2 years.
Yeah.
On the other hand, that does seem like it's including steamrolling Israel, because he's going to do what's best for the United States, even if that goes against Israel's best interest, because he's looking at the big picture and he's wanting the entire Middle East to be, in some better shape than it's been, over the last, 70 years. And so I understand that he's purely looking at this from the perspective of a businessman. We've heard him say, and I'm going to touch on your excellent article over at Substack that you have on this. I understand that from his philosophy, his personal philosophy, that he grew up under the tutelage or mentorship of Vincent Norman Peale. Is that his name?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of you speak it into existence kind of thing. Theology, we would call that name it, claim it, say it, spray it, all the prosperity gospel type stuff, which explains why you would have somebody like Paula White next to him, in the White House. Yeah. And then you have this kind of pretty moral sinner. And I don't mean moral in the sense that he hasn't had multiple wives and those kinds of dramas, but if you go back to early interviews in the 1980s and 90s and so on, he's never really wavered on these positions that he's had with, his thoughts on Iran, his thoughts on Islamic terrorism, on just things that he sees as black and white. There's no gray areas with him. He just kind of sees that. And you brought up an interesting point in your article that something changed with him. Something happened with his interview with, or his meeting with Xi Jinping when he went to China. And I want you to expand on that a little bit. You can go through your article. Feel free to kind of take whatever time you need to kind of unpack that for anybody that hasn't read it. And I will, like I was saying before we came on, I'm going to get all your links and stuff, and I'll put it in the under the title there in the YouTube. And one last thing, for the folks on Facebook, I apologize. I tried to get this uploaded to Facebook. I don't know what's going on with Facebook tonight. It was not going to let me stream live on there. I don't know. So I guess they don't like me, or it's just something with the system right now. There's some kind of glitch in the matrix or something. I don't know. But okay, take it away, Pastor Mike.
So let me say this, and I mean this in a positive light, Pete. I'm glad they're messing with you too, Facebook, because they mess with me all the time. Oh my goodness, constantly messing with me. But anyway, it's good to hear that I'm not the only one. So anyway, yeah, me, like you, hundreds, thousands of other people, we saw a marked difference in Trump's approach to the Middle East after his China visit. And so that left a lot of us wondering, what in the world is going on here? And then I started doing some reading, and I came across Patrick Wood's newest book, The Economics of Technocracy. And I happened to be reading it on an iPad. It was in the evening. I was in my recliner. I just love to read in the evening before I go to bed, and so I was reading Patrick's book, and I stumble across this paragraph, and I do this a lot, Pete. When I read things that just kind of pop out at me, my wife's recliner is right next to me. We've got a end table separate. That's how old people speak things.
I need a recliner.
So I had to read it to her. I said, Kathy, listen to this. And so I read it to her. And can I read it?
Yeah.
For your viewers? Okay. So here's what made me sit up straight in my recliner. This is from Patrick Wood's book again, The New Economics of Technocracy. The subtitle is "You Will Own Nothing," and of course he took that from Schwab and World Economic Forum. But here's what Wood wrote. He said, in 2021, Donald Trump called Bitcoin a scam against the dollar. By September 2024, his sons had launched World Liberty Financial, a cryptocurrency company that would grow from zero to a 13 billion ecosystem in less than 18 months. That's some serious effort right there, folks.
Yeah.
By March 2025, the company had issued USD1, a dollar-pegged stable coin backed by the U.S. Treasury securities. Now, you know what kind of back channel work that takes? By July 2025, Trump had signed the Genius Act into law, creating the federal regulatory framework that legitimized his own family's stablecoin. By January 2026, the charter for a new international governance body called the Board of Peace, with Trump as permanent chairman. Boy, you got to applaud his audacity. I'll give him that. With Trump as the permanent chairman, permanent seats purchasable for $1 billion each, and no congressional authorization whatsoever was signed at the World Economic Forum in Davos. Read that sequence one more time, still quoting Wood here. Read that sequence one more time. From a scam against the dollar to the architect of its replacement in 40 months. No single individual in history has moved the technocratic transition forward with such speed, such audacity, and such structural completeness. If you were wondering whether game over is hyperbole, that sequence is your answer. And when I read that, I thought, there's the answer. That's the answer I've been searching for. What happened during his meeting with Xi? Here's my opinion, my speculation. I don't have any inside sources in DC or none of that nefarious dark. No, I don't have any of that. I'm just telling you, this is what was impressed upon me. Trump's conversation, and we all know that Trump invested heavily. I think it was in his first day or two of office, he announced a $500 billion investment in artificial intelligence, research, infrastructure, whatever. They were going to spend $500 billion. And his stated reason, I agreed with him. His stated reason was somebody's going to win this AI war, and it's going to be us. But I think he stated it in the negative. It can't be China. I think that's what he said.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was the answer. What happened? Well, I think they had a conversation about what is the world going to look like in 2 more years when you're no longer in office, Mr. Trump. And what kind of influence do you want to have on this emerging world in 2 years when you're no longer in office? And part of that conversation, Pete, involved Iran surviving because they are very, very important to China economically.
Yeah.
And they also provide a footprint. I look for China and I look for Russia to both come back into Syria, to Iran, and reestablish. I mean, we know they had bases, they had presence there in those nations prior to this conflict. I think that's going to be reestablished. I think what we're seeing is Trump was pretty much convinced. I'll say it that way. He was pretty much convinced to back off, leave them alone, do whatever you want to do in Gaza and with your family businesses. But if you want to be a part of this moving forward, you got to back off from Iran. That's why I titled the article the way I did, because I saw that as an absolute betrayal of the nation of Israel. And if you're familiar with Bill Koenig's work, then you know that historically speaking, I mean, it's just a mind-blowing correlation between what we do to Israel, actions that we take that are negatively that negatively impact Israel, and what happens in America, whether it's in the financial markets, real estate markets, whether it's natural catastrophes, whatever it is. There's a direct correlation, and I think Caning hits it right on the head with his beliefs. So anyway, that's what spawned that article. I thought, man, if I'm seeing this, other people out there have to be seeing this, have to be wondering what happened in China, why the complete reversal and about face. And we haven't even brought up JD Vance and some of the things that I've seen that the plans were that they were going to take Iran out. They were going to remove the regime until they didn't. And Vance was involved in that to some degree. The things that I've read, heard other people speak about along the lines of betraying those plans to Turkey, and so it had to be called off. But anyway, that's the long and the short of it, Pete. I just see it as a betrayal. Now, I understand America first, I do, but I also understand what the Bible has to say about Israel, and that God has future plans for her, a national restoration that's coming in the future. I think the prophetic scriptures are very clear about that. And I think if you want to be a nation in good standing in God's eyes, then you need to be friendly with the nation of Israel. Now let me say this, because everybody jumps to this criticism. Well, Israel's this and that, and Tel Aviv and gay pride, and all this kind of stuff, and then and they want to throw that out like, hey, nobody agrees with everything any nation does. I don't agree with the things that happen in America. I certainly don't agree with everything that happens in Israel, but I know what the scripture says. And the scripture says that we want to support, encourage, and if need be, fight alongside of Israel. And I think we were on the right path doing that early on, but I think that the path we're on right now is the wrong path, and I don't think it's going to bode well for us. So that's what inspired the article, Pete.
Yeah, I thought it was excellent. One of the things I this is just conjecture as well, because we obviously don't know what was said in the meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping, other than what they released to the press, or what and they haven't, said much. Mostly it's trade, it's, tariffs, it's, he brought over what, was it like 20 or 30 of the tech leaders, like Amazon, like all of them, NVIDIA, Tesla, all of those guys came over. So it seemed like he was coming in, in mass with this, powerhouse of the who's who of, the richest men in the world, that were going to woo China into some kind of a deal to get them to divorce Iran. And it seems like they walked out and it was something altogether different. So with that said, the only thing I can think of is that China revealed something to him that frightened him, frankly. I don't know how else to put it, or caused him great concern if he were to continue pursuing the route that they were going initially. And I don't know. I don't see Trump as a guy that's bullied easily. He's usually the bully when he's in any kind of situation. You see him shake hands with people, he just takes their hand and like yanks it back, and like total power moves. Everything he does is like a power move. So I don't know. I was just thinking, like, what does Iran have that China needs that is worth going to economic or military type of conflict with the greatest military in the United States? And the only thing I can think of with Iran is not their uranium or their drones, or even necessarily that they love the Ayatollahs or anything. I think it was some kind of a deal for their Belt and Road Initiative to be able to carve through a large swath of Iran to do the whole Orient Express. I don't know what they're called. It's the Belt and Road Initiative. The trains that will leave China, Eastern China, and come to Iran and Iraq and kind of branch off. One path goes down to Africa. The other path goes up to Europe and Russia. And so they're kind of at a crossroads, and Iraq is the same way too. Iraq is in a crossroads of the Middle East because everything kind of carves, their way through the continents right there. And I don't know. So some things that I think keep me up at night that I think about is the rise of drone warfare that we've seen in Ukraine. The Ukrainians have taken drone warfare to a new level of terror. And I just got to thinking, how vulnerable are we here in America and our bases across the world? And I remember, so this is going back a bit. This was in 2008. I was in Afghanistan in Bagram. I was the night battle captain for the 101st Aviation Brigade. And at the time, we were the only aviation brigade in theater. And so we had a task force in the east, and we had a task force kind of in the Bagram area, but it was servicing the northern provinces. And then we had a task force in the south. And we were just at that time beginning to push a brigade or task force out to RC Southwest, where the Marines and the Brits were. And I was running, we were running the night operations for all of those, and we were monitoring everything. And I had General Milley, when he was a 1-star, used to come and sit next to me. We had all the screens up in front of us. We'd watch all of the conflicts and the ticks, troops in contact, and all that stuff going on. And I remember a few years later, General Milley, and this is before he turned into a giant turd. And he got bought by the deep state or whoever. Somebody flipped him, just like they flipped Tucker and flipped everybody else.
Yeah.
But he wrote an article called "Miserable, Defiant, Miserable, Rebellious, and Victorious" or something. It was kind of a weird title for coming from I think he was getting ready to become the chief of staff. He might have been Secretary of the Army at the time when he released it, but he was explaining the future of warfare and how the way we'd been fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan at that time, we had these giant bases, and we would go out, walls all the way around. You'd have guards up, and you'd have patrols, and you'd send troops out in convoys, and they'd go do their missions, or you'd send out helicopters. He goes, those days are gone. He goes, you're going to be constantly on the move. You're not going to be able to set up a base because of the robotics and drones and things like that. Or those walls are going to mean nothing to those type of things. They can just fly over them. I mean, the Chinese have these grenades that they can float in the air. They've got these little propellers on them, and you can't jam them. And these grenades just fly to wherever they send it to, and they can fly inside of buildings, down hallways, in rooms. And as soon as they want to detonate that thing, it's just like a floating grenade. It is the craziest thing. And, Britt Gillette was the guy that I think I first heard the term of hive mind technology, swarm technology of these drones. And you watch the stuff kicking off in China, their drone technology is next level. It's probably way better than even the Ukrainians. And what the Ukrainians have is terrifying because they can mass produce those things so quickly. Yeah. So there was some kind of a threat that Trump took away from that meeting that shook him. And, I don't see him as a man that's shaken very easily. So a couple of things to take away from all of this is that, one, you don't completely flip your morals. You don't completely flip your ideals unless you know something that no other people don't know. He must know that the economy is getting ready to collapse. Why else would he push so hard into something that he railed against, like Bitcoin and all the other cryptocurrencies? He railed on them for decades, and now or for years and stuff. And now he's all in on it. So he must see that the dollar's days are numbered, and there's something coming, some kind of crisis, presumably economic, or it could be anything really that could trigger an economic crisis, and the dollar's going to tank like the Titanic. It's going to just sink. And if you don't have this other type of currency, you're going to be the one that doesn't get the chair, when the music stops. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? On the
No,
drones, on crisis coming, etc.
yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Pete. When you're talking about China, it reminded me that they're very likely at the top of the heap on the development and the fine tuning of robotic armaments, robotic warfare, super soldiers, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
Um, they're probably right at the top of that. I wouldn't put it past the Chinese to uh, make certain statements about where they're at technologically on their battlefield strategies, enough to stop Trump in his tracks, certainly. And does he know what's coming? I think he does. Um, you don't get to where he is at, overcome what he's overcome. I mean, we'll have to go a long time in this nation, and I don't think we have that kind of time. But we
Yeah.
would have to go a long time to ever see another Donald J. Trump overcome what he's overcome, all of the opposition from, well, I'll just say it frankly, the enemies of America.
Yeah.
Those that oppose Trump politically speaking, I'm not talking about the average American, those that oppose Trump politically wouldn't care if this nation suffers a financial collapse that devastates most of us if they could pin it on Trump. And that's a sad statement to say, but
Yeah.
we live and walk among people that have that mentality, that if they could pin it on Trump, they'd be willing to go through that chaos. I think they changed their mind in a hurry once it happened, but yeah, we're living in some very interesting times. That's why platforms like yours, you mentioned Britt Gillette's. I'm going to have him on mine pretty soon, and we're going to talk about some of this stuff. But uh, these days that we're living in, if you're bored with the news, just wait. Tomorrow will bring something new,
Correct.
something that'll rattle your cage and keep you up at night. You'll be thinking, "What in the world?" But let me say this: in the midst of all of this, it just reminds me, Pete, of how blessed we are to know Jesus as our Messiah. Stay in the scriptures, folks. Don't let any of this stuff that we talk about scare you or cause you to be depressed or any. That's not the point. We're supposed to be aware of what's happening. I've used the Billy Graham illustration so many times I've lost count, Pete. We should be teaching the Bible with the newspaper in one hand and the scriptures in the other and saying, see that right there? That's this. This is what the scripture says. You're seeing a typological manifestation of that. I'm not saying it's that, but this is what it's going to look like when it does hit.
It's interesting. You talk about that. Ezekiel 38 and 39 detail a coming conflict that historically has never happened. These nations have never aligned themselves in the way that Scripture describes, and for most of both far and near history, going back, even to the year, say 1000 BC, these nations have never aligned this way. So it could not be something from the past. It has to be still something future because they haven't aligned yet like this. And the antagonist in these are, obviously you would have Persia, which we know as Iran, Libya, which is North Africa. You could include probably Libya and I'm trying to think of that little country, Tunisia, and those countries right there along the coastline, because they didn't have the borders that we have today. Sudan, parts of Kenya, parts of Ethiopia, probably all that area. And then you have Beth Tagarma. You have what seems to be modern day Turkey.
Yes.
So if you look at the history of Russia, the history of Turkey, both of those were competing empires at the same time. Persia had waned in terms of power, really from the times of the Romans going forward So we didn't hear a whole lot out of Persia at that time, or even what we would call Parthia. And they've never aligned. They've always been competing empires and competing cultures, competing civilizations. And now they seem to be, one, Russia's just taking a beating, like just the little, 60-pound scrawny kid that's getting just pummeled at the beach by the big, 250-pound football player. And it's nothing they can do about it. They are completely outmatched with the drone warfare. The only thing that they could do is literally, like, they could bomb. I mean, they have ICBMs and stuff that could just level Ukraine. And so in certain regards, the Russians are showing some kind of restraint considering the attacks the Ukrainians have done. Regardless, they've spent, in terms of blood and treasure, man, they have spent so much in this conflict over the last few years with Ukraine. Now, the same thing with Iran. Iran now has taken just a beating from the U.S., sinking all of their navy, sinking or destroying most of their air force, or all their air force, their air defense systems, all of these hardened nuclear sites, Fordo, Isfahan, Pickaxe Mountain, all these places are just getting pummeled. And it seems like the motivation now for them is to recoup those losses by taking out Israel, because Israel's got natural gas, Israel's got warm water ports, Israel's central to everything. And just the standing that and this is coming from like the IRGC and from the Ayatollahs and the mullahs, that if they were the ones to finally destroy Israel, kick Israel out of their land, they would be literally the most popular Islamic movement in the history of Islam. They would go from being the minority to the majority overwhelmingly. And that's what they're hoping for. And the Turks also want that same claim. They want to claim it for Sunni Islam. And they want to reestablish their sultanate and have Tayyip Erdogan or his son take over and run basically the entire Middle East. So these guys have always had competing interests. And now in the last, say 10, 15 years, Vladimir Putin, Tayyip Erdogan, the rotating presidents in Iran, but basically the Ayatollah have now come together, and they've got their eyes set on taking out Israel, and they want to take the plunder. They want to recoup their losses from these last, the only one that hasn't taken any kind of beating recently is the Turks. And they stand, I always look at when there's a conflict, like who's not fighting and why are they not fighting? So you can talk all day about who is fighting, but why are these other groups that seem like they would have jumped in, why aren't they fighting? So they seem to be reserving themselves for some kind of conflict after the fact. And so it seems like this is what's being set up right now, is that these countries are taking such a beating that they're going to want to recoup their losses, and they're going to have to economically do that. And what better time to do that in the height of some type of a crisis where the United States can't respond or won't respond. And, I think the rapture makes a good case for that. The rapture obviously would destabilize the world economy. It would destabilize the United States to a large degree. The leaders that are left in place in the United States after the rapture would, go to bunker down in NORAD, or they go to Mount Weather, or wherever they're going to go, and war game out. Like, how are they going to survive this crisis they didn't see coming? The rapture of the church, like and then you've got the UFO thing happening. You've got who knows what else is going to happen right around that same time. But basically, lawlessness is going to break out. I mean, I was thinking about this today. The law, right? The laws, the system that we operate under as the United States of America, that provides for this, Judeo-Christian civilization that we have, that law is very fragile right now. And it seems like it's not going to take much for something to happen that basically throws that all out the window. And as soon as that happens, you're going to see people go tribal very quickly. And all the white power folks are going to cling together, and they're going to start their onslaught and trying to take over, control territories. The black nationalists, the Islamics, everybody else, everybody's going to be looking after their own, because in a crisis, you tend to just go back to where, your people are, whoever your people are. And so I could see that really kind of destabilizing the U.S. as soon as the veneer of law and order is gone. that the civilization that we have is going to crumble very quickly, especially if it is accompanied with an economic collapse as well. So it seems like that's why this big push to get central bank digital currencies online. They did those stress tests with the banks a couple of years ago. They're probably running all sorts of tests now and just making sure that when the time comes, they can flip the switch and everything switches over to that. You see in Walmart, Kroger's, presumably, I don't know who Kroger's owns. I think they own Albertsons, or I don't know. It's some kind of like all the different Kroger conglomerates that work for them. All of their pricing is now going digital. There no more of those paper, like, oh, this is $2.90. Now it's on a digital thing and it can be adjusted. You talked about the artificial intelligence earlier. This isn't a race like the nuclear arms race. Like there's no mutually assured destruction doctrine with AI. It's whoever gets there first is winner takes all. It is, and same thing with quantum supremacy. Whoever gets to quantum supremacy first, it's winner takes all. And those are the kinds of stakes that Trump is probably very well read into, more than anybody else on the planet, I would think. And leaders like Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, others that have their finger on this intelligence pulse, know massive change is coming, and they're trying to get themselves positioned. And so Trump does things like tariffs. He does things like these military threats, or threats to leave NATO, threats to leave the United Nations, all this stuff. And he does a lot of those things as like stressors. He's trying to see who his allies are. He did a little stressor with Canada, and they immediately turned and ran to the arms of China. So Europe is kind of a mixed bag right now because you've got a lot of freedom movement, populist movements happening. And I am 100% convinced. I know that the 10 kingdoms, the 10 kings that rise, and that the way that the beast's kingdom is going to be set up, that Europe is simply one of them. It's not, it's not just the beast kingdom isn't just Europe. It's just, I think, in my opinion, one region of that. But look at, man, the Europeans are starting to lose it now. They are starting to lose it with all the illegal immigration. The EU Parliament voted not too long ago to kick them all out and to start and that's from the EU. That's from like Brussels. That's like progressive liberal, central right there. And if they're at that point, and that people are at that point in the UK and in Belgium and in Italy and Germany and everywhere else, like they're done. I think Europe is going to have this revival, and they're going to be a revived Rome 2.0, except digital now. They'll have the centurions and all that, and the young people will eat it up, man. It's like retro to the utmost. It is the most retro thing you can bring back is the Roman Empire. Now they may not be wearing togas and stuff like that, but they're gonna identify themselves as the new Roman Republic or whatever. I don't know, but I definitely see all that happening. And that, you're right, man. It's like what newspaper in one hand, Bible in the other. Like, man, I cannot believe this is all like coming together, man. As fast as it is.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very exciting times that we live in. And that's not to downplay the danger. I mean, running parallel to all of this, Pete, I was thinking as you were going through these things, I'm thinking, yeah, and right here in America, we have the rise of the DSA, which is the Democratic Socialists of America. People think that Mandani was just a one-off. No, he was not. He was a picture of the future of America. I've came across this word a week or two ago, and I've begun to use it now frequently because I think it has great explanatory power. And that word is Islamunists. So there is now they've been married for a while. Many people have written about this. I've got a number of books on my shelf back here dealing with the marriage of Islam and communism, Marxism specifically. The binding fact is that they're both satanic. Communism is satanic. Islam is satanic. and that brings them together, binds them together. And what's lost on so many Americans, and I'll give you an example. I think it was Mamdani endorsed 3 candidates in New York that were DSA affiliated. They were supported and funded by DSA, and all 3 of them won.
Mm.
In Colorado, a 30-year incumbent congresswoman in Colorado was upset by a first-time DSA candidate.
Yeah.
Radical. She says, among other things that are crazy, that we need to toss out the Constitution and rewrite the laws of America so that we are not oppressors, we are not colonizers, all of the classical progressive communist phrases. I think, well, I won't say it because I'm not sure about it, but the one of the senators in Michigan is up for re-election, and there is a DSA candidate running against him, and is projected. It's a tight race. So, running parallel to all these things that we've got internal conflict, and most Americans are not aware of this. That this nation, we are being robbed of this nation, and when they get we think the squad, well, those women are crazy. I mean, who pays any attention? A lot of people pay a lot of attention to them. I mean, there's even talk now that Cortez is going to run against Schumer, and she'll probably beat him. And so she'll be the senator from one of the senators from New York. These people are out for blood. They're out to destroy America. They've made no secret of that. And it's high time that we wake up and understand that before it's too late, Pete. So that's domestically. I appreciate what's going on in Europe, and I have the same thoughts that you do on the 10 kings. I think they're 10 regions, they're 10 oligarchies, they're 10 global corporations that have so much power and wealth and control that they're going to have a seat at the beast's table. And look at what's happened recently with Elon, with his SpaceX offering. I mean, I'm laughing because it's so ridiculous. I mean, he went from he was already right at the top of the world's most wealthy, but now he's a trillionaire, and his employees became instant millionaires. And it's like the kind of stuff that's going on today, it just blows the mind. My parents' generation, they worked their entire lives just to purchase a home, and if they were fortunate enough to have it paid off by the time they died, they were considered blessed.
Yeah.
It's a whole new ball game today, brother.
Yeah. And I said this at the outset of the year, that the Democrat Party is done. The Democrat Party that we know of is done. It's going to become something else. And
sure.
This DSA movement within the Democrat Party is just highlighting the fact that they're going to have to increasingly become radicalized, which that also has a cause and effect. The cause is the radicalization because of Trump, and then the effect is going to be Trump is going to have to outlaw or make illegal DSA, and that will come with consequences of, basically, throwing those people in jail, doing whatever he can to make sure that they can't run for political office, because their sole intention is to destroy the United States. And that simply is not something that they're ever going to put up with again. So we saw how close it came under Biden and Harris with the borders, the collapse in Afghanistan, with the war that was started in Ukraine and Russia, all that kind of stuff. Anybody that Trump, you don't have to like Trump to recognize the threat that the Democrat Party represents right now.
That's right. Yeah.
And again, people don't like Trump for a lot of reasons. I totally get that. That's whatever. That's not what this is in particular about. But the other thing I thought about is that if you're Satan, right, and you know that time is coming to drawing to a close, and you need to build the beast kingdom, quick, fast, and in a hurry, you're not going to have Tim Walz and Kamala Harris leading the charge because they don't know the first thing about that. Yet look at everything that Trump's done in just 2 years. I mean, literally like 20 years worth of work in 2 years. And he's doing it under the pretense of making America great again. He's doing it under the pretense that we're going to have another 250 years if he gets his way right now. But we know from scripture that the world, humanity, all of us, everything it's on a timetable, and we were at the end of that. And if you go to Revelation 9, I believe it is, where it talks about the 4 angels that are bound at the river Euphrates, they were bound for a year, a month, a week, and a day. There's a specific time that they're going to be unleashed. And I've talked about this a lot too. So that tells me that this can't be arbitrary because there's already a time fixed for them to do what they're doing. And they're at, toward the middle or a little past the middle of the tribulation. So they're that's, still 3.5, maybe 4 years into the tribulation. So that tells me that the time that for our departure is coming very quickly. And
And I think, Pete, that when this man of lawlessness does arrive, he's not arriving to construct the system. He's arriving to walk into the leadership of the system. It's being constructed. I can't say how close we are to its completion, but I think it's clear to anybody that has eyes that this system is being constructed. And when the Antichrist arrives, he's merely going to step into his office and rule from that position of power. How close are we? Well, we're not date setters, but we know it's getting close. We can see the signs. We see the things that are happening, the alliances that are coming together, the geopolitical stuff. I mean, it's just mind blowing. But I know you do, our friends do. Take it back to the scripture and prove it out through the scripture. I think what's happened in the Middle East in this conflict and the turnaround is proof. I remember a few friends saying, "Wow, if Iran is when this whole thing started, if Iran is taken out, that's going to cause some people to redo their charts." Well, guess what? You don't have to redo their charts because they're going to survive. It looks like, unless there's some kind of something that's going to blow our minds, Pete. Iran's going to survive, and that means they're going to be angry as a bunch of hornets that got their nest rattled. I think they're even plotting right now how they're going to retaliate. And we shouldn't think that they won't try to retaliate against us.
Yeah. I mean, 4 years of open borders. Who knows what's here in the U.S. right now?
That's right.
And that could be part of the threat that Xi Jinping is saying, hey, it's not us, but we know for 100% confirmation that there are sleeper cells ready to go in the U.S. and all we have to do is give our okay. And so it could have been something like that too.
Yeah, and, I agree.
Let me do this. I'm going to let you go at an hour. I'll stay on. And then when I get done, I'll run for like maybe another hour or so, because I don't want to hold you up either. So I'll hold the Q&A and stuff until if you want to step down or step off or whatever, whenever you need to. Okay. Feel free to. But
sure.
I'll just say this. Let me just kind of tie this particular aspect up with Israel. The best thing that Trump could have done is to totally back Israel and take out the enemies that both in Hezbollah, Hamas, not negotiate with these guys at all. Just negotiate with the tip of the ICBM or the Tomahawk or the whatever, and until they break their will, until they're done or they're gone. And so now that he has flipped this, because what I think is taking over, or what Satan is stoking, is his ego and his hubris for some reason, Satan has got him thinking that he's this close to the Abraham Accords being done, and he's going to go down as the greatest president in the world, and he's going to finally achieve peace. And so now he's pulling back his use of force trying to come up with, I don't even know how many peace treaties they've signed already, like 39 or 40 something peace treaties. Somebody was keeping track of it. They may be over 40 at this point. I don't know.
Yeah.
And everybody knows. Marco Rubio knows. Mike Huckabee. I mean, there's people in Trump's inner circle know that this is a fool's errand to go try and make some kind of a peace deal with Iran, because they can't. They can't. It's
right.
Their whole ideology, and what makes them more dangerous than, say, North Korea, is that they want to bring about the end of the world. I mean, the second they get one of these bombs, they're going to use it, because in order for them to bring the Mahdi here, and these are 12, these are the 12ers, the Shia 12ers, who believe that the Mahdi won't come until the world's in this state of like absolute chaos and war and stuff, which is why they sponsor terror everywhere. That's why they spend billions of dollars to fund Hezbollah, to fund the Houthis, to fund these Shia militias in Iraq, to fund terror cells around the world, to fund terror groups in Africa, even Sunni groups that aren't aligned with them, aren't aligned with Shia. They'll support them. They support Hamas. So for them, the more chaos, the more destruction, the better. And that for them, that's going to bring about the end of the age and their Messiah coming, the Mahdi. And so you can't negotiate with them. You can only crush them, destroy them. That's it. And so we know that according to scripture, they're still around. The Russians are still around. The Turks are still around. The North African factions are still around. But I will say this too. I do not think that the Antichrist is Muslim. For one, because when the Antichrist declares himself to be God incarnate in the temple, the rebuilt Jewish temple, one, you have a rebuilt Jewish temple, which means that something happens to the Dome of the Rock and the Al-Aqsa Mosque. Somehow the Muslim will has been broken or shattered, or is not there to even allow them to build a third temple, because the Jordanians have still had control of the Temple Mount. So something changes with Islam. And I think the only thing that could be is the Gog and Magog conflict, because when you have that conflict, what you see is Sunni and Shia coming from every direction. That's what the Gog and Magog kind of is meant to represent. If you look at Magog, that was like all of everything from China all the way to like Russia. I mean, just a huge span of Eurasia was Magog, and so for that, like 1,000 years, that's what the Greeks knew it as. Herodotus and all those guys were writing about the Magogians, and who that later became the Scythians, and the Scythians became the whoever. All of that was Magog. And so something happens for the Jews to be able to rebuild a third temple, one. So then that means Islam's control or desire to destroy Israel and destroy Jerusalem is no longer there. And then number two, you got to imagine if the Jews had built a third temple today, or let's say they built it 5 years ago and it's already standing, that thing would be getting bombed every single stinking day. There would be mortars fired at it. There would be missiles fired at it. I mean, it would just be nonstop. It would be getting hit dozens of times a week if they already had a temple standing.
Yeah.
The Israelis have David sling, all their different air defense systems that are like short, near, and far that go out that stop all the. They would have run out a long time ago. Iron Dome is a laser system that's just now coming online and may be able to kind of, make some long-term air defense system, but they didn't have that. Let's just say they built it a few years ago, or when they took Jerusalem in '67. Why didn't they build it then? That temple would already be destroyed. The Arabs would not let that thing stand on top of what they consider Islamic holy ground. So something happens to Islam, and I think that Gog and Magog breaks them. I think that's what breaks them, and they're still going to be a religion to some extent, but they're not going to be militant like they are today. They'll go the way of like the way the Buddhists are, or Zoroastrians, or Shintoism, all those different groups out there. There's a lot of religions, but they're not, sending suicide bombers every day. They're very kind of just live and let live kind of thing. I think Islam is going to get broken into that system. And at the end of the rapture, you have a vacuum, and that removes the church, the true body of Christ, from the earth. Mm-hmm. That creates a vacuum that the whore of Babylon is going to fill. And then the other side of it, you have Islam, or Gog and Magog will break Islam, and that's going to create a vacuum as well. And I think that's it's going to set the stage perfectly for whatever that end time world religion is going to be.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to give you the final word on this, and if you need to bounce, or you can stay as long as you need to, but I don't want to hold you up beyond an hour.
Yeah.
But I'm going to give you your final words if you want.
Appreciate that very much, Pete. And so just so your viewers know, I'm in Eastern time, and so I'm already an hour past past where you guys are. So I try to limit my times to 9. On rare occasions I'll go till 10, but today ain't one of them. So so, but I do appreciate you, Pete. I appreciate your insights, your platform, and all the information that you put out there for people. It's very, very encouraging. And we need to understand this stuff to connect all of the dots. I'm not one of those folks, and frankly, I don't understand people that take the approach, well, it'll all work out in the end. We don't need to worry about this, that, or the other thing. Let's just preach the gospel. Well, guess what? We are. We are sharing the gospel. I do it every Sunday, every Wednesday. And if I happen to be out in between and run into somebody, I do share the gospel. Sharing the gospel and saying, well, just share the gospel, that's no excuse for ignoring what's going on in our world. We're supposed to occupy till he comes. Now, understanding what that means is we should be up to speed on what's happening. We should be willing to talk about what's happening to our family, our friends, our coworkers, wherever we might be, and try to educate and inform them. Pete, we live in a day like no other, in the sense that I have so many people, and I know it's true for you as well. I have so many people ask me, Mike, what in the world is going on? And they'll name something, or and I say, well, let me tell you, I'll unpack that for you. So here it is. Here's what's happening. But this was all predicted. All of this was prophesied to happen. We go to the scriptures and we read the scriptures and we see what characterizes the last days. And aren't we seeing that right now? In different the people are jockeying for position, and in America, I don't want to end on a negative note, so I'll say this and then I'll end on a positive note, Pete. But America, the younger generation today, they are, depending on where they fall, I pray that they'll fall on the side of the Lord, that the Spirit will sweep across this nation and fill and anoint this younger generation and raise them up with a holy fire. Social media has done a number on Americans. I see so many people, it's like they're married to their phone. They can't go anywhere for any length of time without staring at this thing that they're holding in their hand. That is tragic, because they think that's whatever the feeds they're looking at, that's the most important thing in the world. And they're missing life. They're missing relationships. They're missing what's really happening in our world today. So I pray that for America, the Holy Spirit will fall on this generation and raise up warriors that are willing to serve him no matter what the cost is. That's my prayer for America, because old dogs like me, we ain't going to be around too much longer. And I pray that's because the rapture comes, Pete. That's what I'm hoping. Is take me out of here, Lord. That's what I hope. He's already raising up people like you, people like Brett. I could name a whole list of other folks that are standing in the gap now for the Lord. So I would encourage people, stay strong in the Lord. Amen. Stay in his word. Stay in his word, and the Spirit will speak to you through the word, and he will encourage you by that. So, Pete, I appreciate the opportunity, and whenever I'll join you.
Okay. Well, I definitely look for another email from me We can do it during the day too. We'll have to find a time when we can do a live during the or pre-record or whatever it is. But we'll find some more time in July.
Okay.
Well, we can shoot for July or August, so it won't go beyond August. Let's just say that. And then October, the October Prophecy Conference up in Huron, Ohio, October 24th. I definitely look forward to seeing you there. Hopefully you can make it there and get to hang out.
I'm going to try to do that. So as soon as you have information, please let me know so I can mark off that time in my schedule.
We'll do.
Yeah.
All right, brother.
Appreciate it, Pete.
Thank you. Thank you for coming on.
God bless you, brother. Thank you.
Bye. Well, that was Pastor Mike Spalding. Excellent pastor, great friend to this channel, to this ministry. Check him out. Like I said, I'll get all of his contact stuff and I'll put it into the underneath the title, show notes or whatever for this program tonight. If you ever want to come back and revisit or find out where he's at. And if you're in the Ohio area, if I lived in Ohio, I would be going to his church. Like he would be my pastor there at that. So unfortunately, in the area I'm in right now, there is not anybody. You can't spit without hitting 6 different churches, but not nary one of them talk about the end times. And I've been looking. So if they do, it's a very glancing touch on it. They don't really dwell or do any kind of series. And they definitely don't host any type of conferences or anything about prophecy. So, okay, that said, give me 1 second, folks. My neighbor needs some milk. I'm going to leave it on the front door. Be right back. Okay. It's there. Okay. I got some questions and mods. If you want, you can send in more questions. I was just thinking about like, wow, yeah, I don't know how we're going to get all this done in 1 hour. So how is everybody tonight? Pete the milkman. I don't ever buy milk. I bought milk the other day just for, I was going to do some experimenting in cooking, because I'm trying to figure all that stuff out. And so I bought some milk and I didn't end up using it. So it would probably just spoil in there. So anyway, so I just said, hey, you got any milk? And I was like, yeah. So I just left it at the door. So why buy the milk? Why buy the cow when you get the milk? I've never had that applied to me before. It's kind of weird. Okay, let's see here. Questions. Okay. This is from Kim. We fly soon. Please comment on the statement that Trump made during his election that he was going to go ahead and have $2,000 to every person. I have yet to see any money, and I'm a senior citizen. I have yet to see that money. All the money that they recoup from the fraud from Doge. If I'm not a betting man, but if I were a betting man, I would think that if the midterms look kind of dicey, that's when those checks are going to come out and say, hey, remember I told you that we were going to have these checks for you guys? Well, here it is. The Republican Party is the great party, blah, blah, blah. So that I could see that being used then. If it comes out at all, it would be right before the midterms. Let's see. AAC9207 question. It seems like the hook in the jaw may be Israel's oil since Russia is in the middle of a major crisis with all the refineries being taken out. Yeah. I'm telling you, Russia's going to want to recoup. They've been taking a beating for the last couple of years. So, yeah, I mean, they're going to have to do some drastic. Let's say the Ukraine conflict ended tomorrow. Russia's facing, destroyed infrastructure. They're facing, basically ostracization from much of the world in terms of doing business with them. They are facing generational decline. Their fertility rate is plummeted. Basically their population is going to die out within just about 20 years. Yeah, so Russia is going to have to make some drastic moves after this Ukraine conflict, and it looks like they're just going to join in or probably drop the plant the seed with Tayyip Erdogan or whoever and say, hey, if you guys make a move on Israel, we'll back you, but only when the U.S. is not going to be able to respond, because that would signal World War III at that point. So whatever it is that they're going to do, I think it kind of seems like it lines up with the rapture. It lines up with some type of a global crisis where the U.S. is either unable to respond or unwilling to respond to come to Israel's aid. So that to me is where I see that. Okay, from Renee, how can we biblically support Trump, who has stopped 3 wars when victory was Israel's Gaza, 12-day, and Iran, made threats not to annex Judea and Samaria, now bashes Bibi, profits from Gaza and deal? I totally agree with that statement. Okay. Until the rapture happens, we have to live here, right? And I've used this examples many times, but if you had to live under another 4 years of Biden and Harris, or Harris and Waltz, I mean, you talk about chaos in the last 4 years. It would quadruple what happened before, and we would never recover from that. That means our kids, our grandkids would immediately be ushered into some type of dystopian nightmare because we didn't like Orange Man, or we said Orange Man's bad, whatever. So there's that. And for all the stuff that Trump does against Israel, which I'm 100,000% against, I think he's making terrible, terrible mistakes here. And I've mentioned this before on X. I've mentioned this on Facebook that I generally support Trump on a lot of his domestic issues and even a lot of his geopolitical stuff. But when it comes to his flippant treatment with Israel, and he does this with, surprisingly, with all of his allies. You look at how he talks to Europe and how he treats, European allies. But the fact that Israel's been America's most loyal one in terms of, and not just, what does America get out of supporting Israel? We get vast amounts of intelligence that we would never get any other way about the Middle East and what's happening all throughout there, and who the movers, the shakers. The U.S. and Israel both back in June and here recently, have done these massive military missions together, joint missions that were seamless. And they just, there's no other nation that we could do that with, really, because there's no other nation like on par with the United States when it comes to that level of planning. And I'm telling you, what happened in June was beyond impressive. I mean, just absolutely. If you've never been in the military, it's hard for you to wrap your mind around how hard it is to fly planes from one place to another, do the mission, execute the mission, get the refueling en route, and deconflict all the airspace, deconflict the bombings, making sure that you have all the same sets of mission lists. And who are you targeting? We're targeting these guys. We'll stay out of your altitude. You stay out of our altitude. I mean, it is a lot. It is a lot, because you're talking about these machines that are moving at hundreds of miles an hour, dropping high explosive ordinances at night under the cover of darkness. And I mean, it's a lot to make that happen. It is incredibly difficult to do what they did back in June, and even back here in the past few months. And to have another nation that you could work so seamlessly with, that takes decades of relationship building, of joint exercises, of using common terminology, using, even look at Kuwait. This was back in, I guess it was back in March. They shot down a couple of our jets, and the pilots survived. But that type of coordination wasn't there with Kuwait. It wasn't there with Bahrain or Qatar or any of these other Gulf nations. Even Saudi Arabia, we don't do those types of exercises with them like that. And it shows, because our soldiers, our pilots end up getting hurt because these guys fire at the wrong thing, or they just like, oh, look, a jet, let's fire at it, not realizing, hey, that, you know, we should have checked this tail number, we should have checked this code, whatever, and not fired on our allies. So we've had the friendly forces shoot downs happening at least a couple of times in the past few months by Arab neighbors that were supposedly our allies. But I don't think you would ever see that with Israel, at least not in the recent years. So Israel is America's greatest asset in the Middle East. And from a divine or from a biblical perspective, you know, Genesis 12 still stands, that, you know, God says, I will bless those who bless you and I will curse those who curse you. And what Pastor Mike mentioned earlier about Bill Koenig, his book Eye to Eye, which is still available, I guess, to purchase. I guess he updates it periodically since it came out during the Bush W back in W1, his first term in office. I think that book came out. It may have came out earlier than that, but he chronicles all that. He chronicles every time the U.S. does some type of political action against Israel, and it's always come back to bite us. And people might chalk that up to coincidence or whatever, but that coincidence seems to happen pretty regularly, and it seems to be triggered by us betraying Israel somehow. And I can tell you right now that I'm surprised something really terrible hasn't already happened, and we may be building up to it right now. And the fact that Trump said something to the effect that if it weren't for the United States, Israel wouldn't exist, to me, that was unforgivable. So I don't know how we walk away from that. And I don't know that that washes away all the good that he's done. He shut the border down. He's went after human traffickers. He's went after, Trump's FBI under Kash Patel has really targeted two different groups right now. They're targeting the cartels and they're targeting pedophiles and those that are going after children or hurting children. And I've never seen it ramped up to this level. And he's empowered states to do the same. And you see that happening in Florida and Texas, all over. So it's a good thing. He's done a lot of good. He's shut down the fentanyl. Look at how many Americans were dying from fentanyl every year from just that was coming in from the cartels that had been coming over from China. Yeah, he's done a lot of good. But I don't know that's going to wash away his betrayal of Israel. And if he does not come around very quickly, or he does something that is going to really put Israel in a hard place, I think the U.S. is going to pay the price on that. So we're not out of the woods yet. Okay, let's see. Mrs. C6721, do you know how strong our drone technology is in the United States? Well, I know in 2008 we had started one of the first task force for drones when I was in Afghanistan, and I think before that there was a lot of experimenting with what they call MUM-T, manned unmanned teaming. So they would have an Apache and they would pair an Apache up, an AH-64 with a drone, and they would go out and do, missions together. Whoever was flying the drone would be paired up with the Apache, and the drone would be flying at, some, 10, 12,000 feet or whatever they were at. And they would be able to look out and give the feed real-time intelligence back to the AH-64, who may or may not be able to see that because they're going to be flying a lot lower. And, basically be able to provide that battlefield intelligence right there on the spot. And it was pretty successful. And that was, in the early 2000s. So I can imagine that right now, our drone technology is probably, in terms of our practical use, we're still kind of embryonic in that sense that they are now being incorporated into more and more units across the formations. But it's not to the level or the quantity, I guess, that say Ukraine is doing it, or even China perhaps has that technology. I will say that we have these companies in the United States that are making mind-blowing type of robotic drones and hive mind swarm technology. All that we're making all that stuff in spades. We have not used all that stuff yet in terms of practical use. We haven't really used those on the battlefield yet. our biggest weakness right now is the fact that we are incredibly vulnerable to these type of drone attacks, and especially as how, if you look at how Ukraine has been able to, basically they can mass produce their own very cheap drones that are incredibly effective, and then they can mix AI into it, and those things can operate. With the way I understood, some of their long-term or long-range drones that would not have the fuel capacity to fly from, say, Kyiv into Moscow. The way they're doing it is they're putting these drones, or hanging these drones upside down on balloons, fill the balloons up with helium, wait till the winds are to go in the right direction, and they let these balloons go. And these balloons will go for forever, until those balloons start changing direction or whatever. Then those drones basically just drop. They cut the line or whatever happens. They drop from that balloon and then they fly. And they have the AI programming into it already. They know exactly where they're going to hit. They've got a grid coordinate, probably like a 10-digit grid coordinate, and they plow into that thing, and they're able to do these deep strikes into Russia. I thought this back in the early 2000s, because when I was in Iraq in 2005 and 6, IEDs were the biggest threat. I mean, and I was just thinking back then, I was like, what would happen if, IEDs started showing up on American highways? It looks like a piece of trash, like a bag of trash or whatever. And as soon as you get by it, boom, it blows up. I imagine that happening across a couple of states or whatever. I mean, it could cripple, highway traffic. It would cripple logistics. It would cripple, business, all sorts of business, because people don't want to drive on these roads. And if it happened enough, it would basically cripple our economy and our road networks, which is one of the biggest strengths that the U.S. has. It's one of the things we don't really think about, but it's our roads. In the Roman Empire, what made Rome so great? It said all roads lead to Rome, right? So Rome was heavily invested in making these roads and making sure that they created this network for them to be able to move around their empire very quickly. And that's the United States. That's one of our hidden strengths that we have, is our road networks and our ability to basically maneuver, go anywhere. It's much different in a place like Iran, where if he does a bridge and power plant day like he's threatened to do, and you think about how mountainous Iran is, I mean, you start taking out the bridges, you're starting to cut off civilization right there. I mean, they're going to be literally cut off from each other. They can't get keep these bridges up. So all that to say, we have very, very advanced drones, very advanced. We just have not mass produced them and put them into the formations like other countries have done, because we haven't needed to. We've had, F-35s, we've had, all these fancy missile systems and jet fighters and advanced helicopters and satellites and all this other stuff. So, we haven't really needed to invest in drone warfare like that, but a lot of companies have. And there's stuff that they're putting out is mind-blowing. I'm blanking on the guy's name. Palmer Luckey, I think is his name. And his company, they have this, I mean, even this, not even drones, but even like the helmets that the soldiers will wear and the new like goggles and stuff, they're paired up with a drone overhead. And that drone is giving that soldier on the ground 360-degree field of view that he can see in his glasses. Although he can see behind him, he can even see as he's looking through, let's say, the forest, and he's coming up upon like a compound or something. He can see through metal containers. You can see if people are hiding behind those. Like, it's giving soldiers, it literally is like, sci-fi stuff now. It's beyond sci-fi stuff. If you go back and watch Aliens or some movie from the 1980s and look at the technology they had then, their science fiction technology, like we have stuff that blows that out of the water. So we're very, very far advanced. Now, again, we haven't employed this across the forces to the degree that China has or other nations have, but we do have that. We're probably right there at the very tippy top with in terms of drone power. We haven't needed to use it like that. So Kathy says China put a spell on Trump. Something, man. Connie Wood said, oil and not gas is our downfall. Iran closing the strait is affecting fertilizer and cause famine. No diesel to get food. Yep. Fertilizer is going to be a huge issue. Let's see. I haven't been on the chat much tonight. Karen Lightfoot says, agreed. My husband and I both saw a marked change since Trump's visit to China. Said to my husband, I wonder if China had some ninja warrior sneak into his room despite all the Secret Service. They may have revealed some type of intelligence to him that the U.S. is on shaky ground when it comes to sleeper cells and all this other stuff, that they may know stuff because they're tied in with Iran. They know exactly where these things are. And there may become some kind of a deal that they work with. Hey, you let off Iran, back off, make sure that you can keep the strait open and you can make sure they don't have nuclear, but keep the regime in place, or else, or if you don't tell it, or if you don't do that, then we're not going to tell you where these sleeper cells are. We're not going to tell you where these threats are going to be coming from. They could be little ships, fishing trawlers off the coast of, pick a coast, that have ICBMs hidden on them. They could be things like that, or even mass these little boxes of drones. Man, they can just get close to the port or whatever, and they can just launch these drones near Houston or something. And each one of these drones has like the equivalent of a grenade or something on there, and they can just start flying them into refineries and blowing. I mean, that would be painful. You think gas prices are high now? I mean, man, you're talking easily $5-6 in Texas. That would be nightmarish. In other states that's probably normal, like California, but for here it would be, in California it would be $10, $12, $15 a gallon, or Michigan, other places like that. Mel says, I feel like Israel will do something drastic that will finally get the U.S. to turn their back on them, and that will be the nail in the coffin for the U.S. I don't disagree, because Israel's looking at this as an existential threat. Hezbollah is an existential threat. They're right on their borders. Hamas, existential threat. They got to finish that off. So I know that recently they're starting to fill all those tunnels in with cement. So we'll see how that shakes out. I'll say this. I've said it before. I'll say it again. Whatever happens with Gaza, it will never be what it was. And obviously, Israel's not going to allow Hamas as a political entity, to ever exist again anywhere near them. So despite what the U.S. says, and if you had a strong leader in Iran or a strong leader in Israel like Netanyahu, but even if he doesn't survive this, whoever takes over after him, if that person was a strong Orthodox or observant Jew, in the sense that they respected the Old Testament, or for them that would just be the Tanakh, that their faith in God, they would take that risk. They would wipe out Hezbollah. They would wipe out Hamas. So all that to say, they may still will do this, and they may still incur the wrath of Trump. And I think if Trump retaliated even further, I think that we'd be done. Something would happen to us, like a Hurricane Katrina times 10, or a massive California earthquake, or something would happen that would be so devastating to us that it would totally take America's focus off of the Middle East, and all the resources would be going towards fixing whatever happened. Kind of like how Hurricane Helene hit. Imagine like multiple things like that happening all at the same time, and I mean the U.S. would have no choice but to address the crisis in their borders. Richard says, my son had a drone for 30 minutes, flew it into a tree. He no longer had a drone. That would be me. I would have lost that thing a long time ago. And funny thing is, we lost drones in that task force I was telling you about in Afghanistan, because at the time we didn't have all the satellites that we have up, and those Predator drones were being tethered to, so we were piggybacking off old Soviet satellites that were still operational in the area over Afghanistan. And those satellites have been up there for who knows how long. And those satellites generally don't have long lifespans. I I think the Tesla satellites, those things only last for like 5 years. Starlink, 5-10 years at the most. These things have been up there for like 15-20 years at that point. Because you remember the Soviet Union collapsed in 91, and those drones went unmanned for a long, or those satellites went unmanned for a long time. Somehow they were able to piggyback off these things. But we've had drones, predators that just flew off. They lost the tether and they just kept flying, and they ended up in Pakistan or somewhere, China, or one of the stands. They kept going, and we never saw them again. So they crashed at some point. I would say not funny, but funny, haha, in a tragic way. Diane Hamilton, new intelligence reports indicate that Iran's Quds Force, part of the IRGC, has reportedly established a unit called Mukhtar. The unit is working with Mexican cartels and elements of the Iranian diaspora to plan assassinations of Trump and other U.S. officials. Yeah, which is why taking out Maduro was you take out the center of that wagon wheel and the spokes and everything starts falling off. So they had, the cartels had been sleeping with the Chinese and sleeping with the Venezuelan leadership to make, to keep themselves in power, to move drugs and to move human trafficking and all that kind of stuff up and down Central America, from South America in through Central America into the southern U.S. and to the West Coast and to the Gulf. And taking out Maduro cut the centerpiece of that wheel out, and these spokes are just dangling now. So at this point, by targeting all the drug boats in the Caribbean, and then also on the Pacific side, which I still believe the Coast Guard and the Southcom, Army South, or I would say Southcom, is still, and Northcom are still working to fight and do those things. It's really, and then taking out key members of the cartel, key leaders, head guys. It causes all this kind of chaos amongst the cartels. They start vying for power and territory and stuff. They start shooting each other. But at some point, yeah, I can see how the Iranians would pair up with them and basically start trying to work some kind of ways to target Trump. And I feel like that's a very viable threat that he has to deal with. Not only that, but you have all the wacky left, DSA types, progressives, woke progressives, hardcore Democrats that would love nothing better than for something to happen to Trump, and they would be willing accomplices in this because they think that the ends justify the means, not realizing that probably would trigger some kind of a civil war at that point within the U.S., which is exactly what they want. They want the United States to break apart. They don't care how it breaks apart. They just need the Constitution's hold over this country to be broken so that they can start rewriting laws and rewriting things in their own best interest, which is for them, socialism, which, a la communism. And, the funny thing is about all this is that, we talk about the Red Green Alliance. We talk about I'm trying to figure out, the progressive left that's pairing up with the Islamic movements and Queers for Palestine and all that kind of junk. It is like the definition of useful idiot that the Islamic radicals would eat it up. They eat it up every day. They don't care one iota about progressive wokeism. Like, they don't care about it. None of that. They don't even agree with any of that stuff. But the enemy of my enemy is my friend kind of thing happening here. And as soon as they get into a position of power, all those progressive woke folks are going to be done. They are going to be destroyed so quickly by the Islamic groups that take control. It will happen so fast they won't even they won't even know what hit them, basically. But they'll use them up. They'll use them right now for the time being. They'll use them to be distractions in Minneapolis. They'll use them to be distractions, via Antifa and via all these other kind of little political movements that are happening. So it's a marriage of convenience right now for them. And I keep thinking about that phrase "useful idiot" because that's exactly what these progressive woke folks are going to, there was, I think, 6 or 7 of them that, they shot up this ICE facility here in North Texas, and they've already been charged, man. Like, I think 5 or 6 of them, they end up with like over 30 years in prison. And it's a rude wake-up call, because that was definitely not anything that would have happened under the Biden administration. Hey, Pete, have you ever listened to Richard James Newton on YouTube? He's reporting on military supply and movement into all countries in Ezekiel war. Very, very interesting. I have not heard of him, but I will definitely check that out. Yeah. We're moving. I think we're giving Turkey like these like F-35s or some crazy technology or whatever we're giving them, which I think is just, again, this is putting Israel in harm's way. And but what's interesting about the Ezekiel war is that it seems like that they are going to have some types of modern weapons, but it seems like these armies are coming in droves, that they're marching and driving vehicles and riding horses and whatever. It seems like they're coming by ground to march against Israel. And that's where they get destroyed, in the mountains north of Israel and presumably all around Israel. And if it were just like missiles and stuff, if they just decided to fire all these missiles at Israel, you'd think that's what they would do first, instead of trying to just march on Israel. And at that time, Israel's living in peace and in security. So it seems like Israel has to do something in the meantime that will secure their borders, eliminate the immediate threats around them, and presumably neutralize the far threats like Iran, so that when the Battle of Gog and Magog occurs, these armies are marching or coming by ground against Israel, which begs the question: how was Israel taken by surprise by this? Because we know that Israel's intelligence is second to none. I mean, Mossad and the IDF, and those guys know stuff years before we know it, so how are they taken by surprise or caught by surprise? So it could be that something happens to our satellites too, some type of a solar storm, X-class flares, direct hit on that part of the world where it just kind of blinds everybody over there. And if something happens to the US and we're not in any kind of position to help anybody, and Europe hasn't invested in their own defense for decades, so they're kind of behind the power curve on this. All the other countries seem kind of invested in making this war happen. Turkey, Iran, Persia, or Turkey, Iran, Libya, presumably Russia, or at least the Islamic parts of Russia, and all the stands, all the former Soviet satellite states. So they get caught off guard somehow, and it seems like something has to happen to the satellites in order for Israel to be caught off guard like that. Well, it seems, first of all, they need to secure their borders and secure their immediate threats. So it seems like they're going to finish what they start with Hamas. They're going to finish what they started with Hezbollah. They might even take out Damascus, as we see in Isaiah 17, and Giuliani and his henchmen there. And then presumably the Houthis as well. And right now, I think Israel's the only country. I think we were set to recognize Somaliland, which is, if you know where the Horn of Africa is, Somaliland is kind of like the northern portion of Somalia. And back in the 90s, they got their act together and they basically put up a wall, fence, whatever, and said, hey, this is Somaliland. We're going to live like a normal country. We're not going to live like a bunch of warlords, murdering each other and taking power every few months. So Somaliland is a very stable, kind of thriving country there in the Horn of Africa, along with Djibouti. And I think Israel may stand up their military there, help them stand their military up to be kind of a safeguard against the Houthis, which is right across the Red Sea from Somaliland, as a kind of a counterbalance to them. So it's so many things are in play right now. It's hard to see what's going to actually shake out. I still remain convinced that the only viable way for the U.S. to actually forever neutralize Iran's quest for uranium enrichment is to nuke those sites with earth penetrating ICBMs, or earth penetrating these nuclear tipped missiles, the B-61 series. I think that's definitely still a possibility. We don't want to send in ground troops, but if it doesn't look like we're going to get any type of cooperation with them, and it also seems like Iran can't help themselves but violate these treaties. They can't stop doing something that, excuse my French, that pisses Trump off, that he's finally going to just snap and say, take out their mountains, take out Pickaxe Mountain. I want to level it, or Fordo or Esfahan or whatever, wherever this uranium is buried, and do it in such a way that nobody will ever get it, ever. And so I stand by that. I still stand by the thought that Trump could leave NATO, and that the Democrat Party is dead. Whatever it's going to become, it's not going to be called the Democrats anymore. Now they're, it seems like the DSA is kind of the rising tide. But I also believe that Trump is not foolish enough to let them steal another election and then basically hijack the country and run it into the ground. So, something will have to happen with that as well. Squidopotamus. Yeah, I am. Well, if you want to just do a couple in the chat, I'm going to basically, I'm at hour and a half right now. So I knew that Pastor Mike he had a kind of short time frame tonight, so I didn't want to hold him up beyond that. But I also don't want to deny you guys time for some Q&A. The mods, you guys don't have to collect them anymore. I'll just read straight from the chat. You guys just sit back and enjoy and drink your iced tea or coffee or whatever it is you're drinking. Vanilla root beer floats. Amen. Does he direct? Oh yeah. So let me read this from you guys, or for you guys. And actually, I'll just put this up on the screen. Move this off down. Okay. Share screen. Brethren, join in following my example. This is Philippians. And note those who so walk, as you have us for a pattern. For many walk, of whom I have told you often, and now tell you even weeping, that they are enemies of the cross of Christ, whose end is destruction, whose God is their belly, and whose glory is in their shame, who set their mind on earthly things. For our citizenship is in heaven, from which we also eagerly wait for the Savior, the Lord Jesus Christ, who will transform our lowly body, that it may be conformed to his glorious body, according to the working by which he is able even to subdue all things to himself. Folks, the minute you are born again, you are woken up from the matrix, if I can use that kind of familiar phrase. Thank you to the dude. Appreciate you. The minute that you're born again, and you're born again by believing in the finished work of Christ on the cross, his shed blood on the cross as sufficient payment for our sins, because we cannot pay for our own sins. We are incapable. And the only way to acquire the righteousness of God, as it says in 1 Corinthians 3, is by the finished work of Christ on the cross. And the minute that you're born again, you're sealed with the Holy Spirit. And the Holy Spirit, as Jesus explains in the upper room discourse, John 14-16, he is to guide us into all truth. And it's like your eyes are opened for the first time, and you're starting to see the world for what it really is. And for us, some it's slow, and for others it's kind of a night and day kind of thing. And I know I'll use a lot of movie analogies, but if you remember the movie They Live back in the early 80s, and Rowdy Roddy Piper was the main character, and he puts on these glasses. I don't know where he gets these glasses, but he sees the world as it is, the billboards, all the people walking around, newspaper headlines. And he puts on these glasses, and it's like everything is exposed for what it really is, And the minute you're born again, your eyes are opened, and you're able to finally see the world for what it really is. And this world is passing away. Is it right? As John writes in, I think, 1 John 5, the world is passing away in the lust thereof, but he that does the will of God will live forever. And we're at the end of this age. We're at, even non-believers recognize that we're in some weird transition phase right now, and the world's never going to be the same anymore. And there's so many kinds of new technology out there that are existential threats in and of themselves. Each and every one of them by themselves are threats to humanity. Thank you, T-Bone. Appreciate you. And I don't know, even if we set aside theology, we set aside eschatology, we set aside the Bible, if we set aside all of that stuff and said, even if we didn't know who Jesus was, or if he was ever coming back, if you set aside all that stuff and we are exactly where we are today, the world cannot continue on in the current trajectory that it's going. There is too many threats that are facing us on every single front. And if they aren't direct, immediate threats, they are peripheral threats to our civilizational well-being. And like something as simple as the right to repair is a law that we see going up in a lot of places. And it's not even necessarily a legislative law in some areas. Some of it's corporate, where companies sell, basically, what's it called? Obsolescence. Whatever the product is designed to break down in like 2 years or whatever, or 3 years or 2 months, and then you have to keep buying the new thing because you're not allowed to repair your own vehicles or repair your own machinery. You have to have the company who sold it to you, they have to repair it. And this is going on a lot. And this has huge ramifications going down the road. And it goes back to this whole idea that we're going to get to the point where you're going to just be renting everything. You won't ever really own anything anymore. Everything is just going to be a service. You don't even own your own property. You could have 100 acres, and if you don't pay your property taxes, you're going to lose that land to the government. So you never truly own anything anymore. Everything is being rented. Your house, your land, your any kind of product that you get nowadays is coming with some type of a service agreement. So ownership is gone. There's no money in it for a corporation to sell you something that is designed to last, say, for a lifetime, 50 years. They sell you that product one time. I mean, they used to make light bulbs that ran for decades. They know how to make light bulbs that run for decades, but there's no money in it for them, because they sell you this one light bulb, then you never buy another light bulb again unless you break it somehow, right? And those businesses, they learned this back in the 1930s. They went out of business because their products never broke down, and people only had to buy them once. So again, that's from a marketing standpoint and from a business standpoint, that's, you'll make a lot of money real fast up front, and then your company will go out of business at that point. So all that to say is that I think that we're moving into this area where there's so many existential threats, whether it's artificial intelligence, quantum technology, all the energy type weapons, all the genetic manipulation stuff that we're doing, all of the long-term physical ramifications we're suffering from microplastics, if you wear Lululemon pants, your body is absorbing microplastics, and this is like the forever chemical things that enter your body and you'll never get rid of them. And I would say even for most polyester stuff. So even if we take aside the Bible, eschatology, all that, we are destroying this generation to the extent that we would maybe at most have one more generation left. And that you talk about the declining birth rates and the rising infertility. It's catastrophic across the world. So, there's so many things happening right now that even if you don't factor into the rapture, you still have a lot of things that are going to destroy the earth. And we're not long for this world. Even without God's intervention, I think the world is racing towards destruction. And, that stands to reason why Musk and others are so bent on getting off the planet or having an escape plan to get off the planet. And it's funny, because they're investing billions of dollars in this escape plan. Imagine if they invested billions of dollars into the true escape plan, which is the rapture of the church. That would be fascinating to see, right? If we had billions of dollars to set up watchmen everywhere and warn everybody, and we could all be sons of Issachar, and everybody would get to the point where we're tracking every little thing. And I'm not sitting in an apartment, I'm sitting in a studio with, live feeds from, it could be like that, but we're all just kind of scratching by and eking out, and we're small channels, and I'm a small channel, but I love helping out other small channels. I don't look at this as competition at all. I wish there were 10,000 more of me out there doing what I'm doing to warn more, because there's always people that I'm never going to reach. And there's going to be people that you reach that I can never reach. Right. I mean, so there needs to be more of me and if you don't have the drive to get on a camera and, sit in front of thousands or tens of thousands of people or whatever every week, that may not be your thing. But, you could definitely do stuff locally with your community, with your neighbors, with, wherever it is that you hang your hat, and whatever your circle of influence is, that's where we're called to be salt and light. So anyways, keep your head up. Keep looking up. We know we're near the end. We're in the season. We're coming up on Tish B'Av, which is my personal high time that I look at. And I always think that if the Lord was going to use the rapture in any kind of way to wake up Israel, like kind of how COVID woke up a lot of people, like, whoa, a global pandemic, the whole world shuts down, we must be living in the last days. Like, a lot of people woke up during that time. I would think that if the rapture happened on Tish B'Av, which I think is somebody in the chat can help me out here, I think it's the end of this month. I would think that would be a huge wake-up call for Israel. That'd be a great time for the rapture. But until then, we have to live here, right? We have to live here. We have to occupy until he comes, and make the best that we can with what we have in the gifts and callings that God's given us. Isaiah asks, is it true that 30,000 guillotines that were ordered and purchased by Obama? I have no idea if they exist. I don't know. Somebody let me know where they are. I have not seen hide nor hair of those things. And here's the thing about the beheading, right? Everybody, I hear this all the time. Islam is the religion where they cut the heads off. Da, 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 da. I was trying to find it earlier. There is a video of, I don't know how to describe it. It's like this mega flock of drones, little bitty drones, like yay big, flying around, and they're not even AI. It's just they're flying together. They have that AI, and the video wasn't AI, is what I meant, but like it was real. So many. It was like this. You ever seen those huge flocks of birds that just, they move as like one, and it was just like massive. It could be tens of thousands of birds all flying at the same time. This is like that with drones. And a little drone like that with just enough of shape charge in it that if you don't have the mark of the beast, those things could automatically target people, because of the facial recognition and all the surveillance capabilities we've developed over the last few years. Those things could be designed easily to fly into the head of that person if they don't have the mark on their hand or forehead, and just has just enough of an explosive to take your head off, literally. I think that's much more likely than guillotines. Although I think guillotines could be in play. But I don't think it's Islam. I think Islam is much too inflexible to ever, one, become the religion of the beast, where the world leader at that time then declares himself to be God. That would be blasphemy to Islam. So they would immediately be up in arms against that. So I don't think that that's going to be that. I think you need a religion that's flexible and bendable and moldable, like say Roman Catholicism, that kind of mixes in the UFO alien stuff with the whole ecumenical movement on top of this now rising leader that seems to have supernatural power. I think you're going to need religions that aren't dogmatic about what they believe. They're going to need them to be pliable, and then Satan is going to use that pliability to shape them into this final world religion. July, Mark says July, Tish B'Av is July 22nd or July 28th. Yeah. So if we go past this year's Tish B'Av, obviously it can happen at any time. I kind of look every year at Tish B'Av. It seems like from a pragmatic standpoint, a divinely pragmatic standpoint, it seems like that would serve a very good purpose if it happens on that day. Doesn't have to happen on the day. It just seems like it would make sense to happen on that day. Tiffany Flight. I tend to think the beheading is for total humiliation and terror. Yeah. I think, you know what I think, and this is a very depressing thought. All these churches that we see everywhere now, especially in the Metroplex, like I said, they're everywhere. I think they're going to use those as the execution centers, or a lot of them. They'll convert those churches over to places where they kill the tribulation saints as the ultimate kind of blasphemy to God. Squidopotamus, have you heard of the videos called Messiah 2030? Yes, it's a 3-part series about the timeline of our coming Messiah. It's pretty good. I recommend to watch it. I think I saw that, and I did not agree with the idea that, correct me if I'm wrong, but the second coming was in 2030. We've kind of blown past that window already. Hannah Rosa, lopping your head off will be a spectator sport. Yeah, you know what? You could have those drones flying around on the outskirts of towns, and just like they're hunting people down in Ukraine, the Russians down in Ukraine. And you could also have those arenas. You could also have the beheadings as public sport as well. You could have both. Both could be true at the same time. Joyous Servant says, rapture during Feast of Trumpets, which begins on 9/11/26. I do not see the rapture any way associated with the Feast of Trumpets. Sorry. It could happen that day. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying I don't see how it is. I connect, when I think about 1 Corinthians 15 and talking about the last trumpet, or the last trump in the King James, it reminds me, if there's a last trump, there has to be a first trump. Well, what was the first trumpet of God? That happened back in Exodus 19, when the nation of Israel gathered for the first time as a nation before the foot of Mount Sinai. And, you know, on the third day, this trumpet blast of God, and people were freaking out, knees were quaking, teeth were chattering, people were hitting the ground because this trumpet blast from God was so powerful and reverberating through everything. And the mountain was smoking, it was on fire, and lightning and all of that, the power of God, where God comes down and Moses goes up, right? And he spends 40 days up there with him the first time. And so to me, I think that's the first trumpet call of God, where Israel is gathered for the first time before God. And at the last trumpet, the church is gathered. The church for the past 2,000 years is finally gathered together for the first time, and we meet the Lord in the air. He comes down, we go up. That to me makes the most sense. You don't have to believe that. I'm just saying it. In my mind, it makes a lot of sense that way. Did you say, Melody says, did you say we might have another generation on the prophetic timeline? No, I'm saying that even if we take the rapture out of the picture, we take out the second coming, take out all Bible prophecy, that within a generation we'll have already destroyed ourselves just through our own efforts, through our own technologies, apart from the beast or the Antichrist or anybody else. Mark says another possible date would be the traditional wedding day, such as when Jesus turned water into wine on the Essene calendar. This is always on the same day each year. Yeah, that my friend shared that. There's a AI video about the water into wine. It is, I mean, it's AI, but it's really good. It makes you think about that whole like, why were these the pots that hold the water. What do they call those things? The vats or whatever. Why are they stone and not clay? Anyways, it was pretty fascinating to watch the whole thing. Kathy, the Italian, says, I remember a time when Catholics were dogmatic. Yep. I'm excited to explore everyone else's homes that Jesus made for us. You can get to quickly learn about someone by. That's moving too quick now. You can get to quickly learn about someone by the house Jesus built for them. That's a good way to think about it. Thank you, James. I love it when my question is ignored. Richard, I did not see your question. Oh, here it is. I see it. Why do people still think that Trump is the Antichrist? He clearly is the one setting it all up. Why do people still think that Trump is the Antichrist? He clearly is the one setting it all up. I don't think, well, I'm not saying that you think that, but I'm saying I never thought he was the Antichrist. I think the Antichrist is going to be a much younger man, and he is going to be European of some flavor, not American. And he may be the European version of Trump, which I can definitely see that. So there's probably some rising political leader in Europe right now that is still in the shadows, in the wings, that nobody knows about, that is making the right moves and make the right connections, and is preaching a very popular message, which is populism. They have a common threat now, which is they needed a threat. The European continent needed a threat, so they have this weaponized immigration of Somalians and North Africans and Middle Easterners and Pakistanis and all these people causing all kinds of chaos in Europe, and it's causing the people to rise up. It's kind of like the Hegelian dialectic, where the elites create the problem, force that problem on the people. The people are just finally can't take it anymore, and they begin to cry out for a solution, and then the elites give them the predetermined solution, which is going to be, in my opinion, this new system, this beast system. And this beast system may be the right formula, because of the technology of our day now, that other regions begin to mimic that same type of setup that the EU has, which also stands to reason that the US is not in some kind of a position. Now, hear me on this, because I don't want anybody to get mistaken. And I'll do a video on this in the future with Tyler. I'm still planning on doing that. Or we're still planning on doing that. That the United States, just because the rapture happens and the current U.S. form of government and our way of life collapses, does not mean the U.S. disappears from the map. What comes out of the ashes of the old U.S. of A. is going to be some new form of government, some new system that is very much in line with the beast kingdom. And it could be the new Babylon. It could be this mystery Babylon that rules for a few years, and then it's destroyed from without, from these other kings and stuff that hate the United States. How many people hate the U.S.? And it was surprising to me through the World Cup and all this stuff that the Europeans that have come over have been completely blown away by just normal America and the generosity and kindness and just the friendliness of Americans. And that's the average person. The elites, though, hate us. The elites of those countries hate us because of our wealth and because of our weapons technology and because of our regular technology and because of our commerce and all that kind of stuff. Our standard of living, I heard this, I don't know if it's true, and I've been to the UK a few times, but I obviously haven't been to everywhere in the UK, so I don't know this to be but they said the standard of living in the UK is lower than our poorest state, which in my understanding, I think might be Mississippi. So I don't know that to be sure. I don't know which state has kind of the lowest, maybe Louisiana. But nevertheless, the standard in Mississippi and Louisiana is higher than in the UK, which blows my mind. Okay. Let's see. This thought came to mind. Do you think it could be possibly King Charles' son, Prince William? It could be. I don't think it's Prince Charles. I really don't think it's him at all. 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, maybe, but not today. Oh, the USA lost to Belgium. Man. Thank you, T-Bone. I didn't know that. I was curious about that. But yeah, so it could be a son. It could be to somebody we're not even thinking of right now. So whoever it is, he's going to be incredibly popular and well loved, and he's going to champion something in Europe that is going to be enough to get him. They're going to want him to basically lead all of Europe, you know. So whoever that is, whatever that is, I don't know. I think he's alive today. Whoever the Antichrist is, he is definitely alive. All right. I think that's it for tonight. At 2 hours, right on the money. Thank you guys for hanging out tonight. God bless you. Thank you, moderators, for getting all the questions and for policing the chat and everything that you do every single week, promoting the channel. I'll be in Guthrie, Oklahoma on the 26th. I will put, as soon as I get maybe 2 weeks out or whatever, I'll put the little, promo and stuff out for it or whatever. If you want, it's just going to be a normal service. So I'll be teaching their Sunday school and I'll be teaching the main service. And then August 14th in Roseburg, Oregon, I believe that's just the Friday night there. They do prophecy at that church Friday nights. And then I'm probably going to swing through Idaho to go see my mom again, because I'm up in that neck of the woods, and every time I'm up there, I want to go by and swing by and see her. So right now, I don't have any plans to speak anywhere in Idaho that I know of. But if there's anybody in the Sandpoint area that want to meet up and do like a coffee Bible study, whatever, I'm totally down for that one. If we do that one night or whatever, that'd be cool. If not, it's whatever. So Fort Collins, Colorado will be in September 11th and 12th. That'll be in Steve Schmutzer's community. They're the Solid Bread community. And you can see flyers up for that already. Myself, Mondo, Gonzalez, Lee Brainerd, Brandon Holthouse, Steve, and then there's another guy speaking there. I can't remember his name. But that'll be Friday, so the 11th and 12th. So I'm gonna have to fly out on the 10th, because I don't want to fly on September the 11th for some reason. That does not excite me to fly that day. And then Belfast will be at the end of September. Still planning on going back over there to Pastor Gary's church in Victory Church in Belfast. I'm really looking forward to that. And then after that, October will be October 24th in Huron, Ohio, and then in Branson, Missouri, with Prophecy Watchers there. I think it's December. I think it's like that second weekend in December. So I'll be around parts of the U.S. and the world, so you should see me out and about. And then next summer, I do plan on coming to Florida if Prophecy Watchers does their conference out there. I think next summer, if we're here, Lord willing, if we're here and I'm still alive and kicking, I will definitely try and get out to the Florida side just so I can speak there once. That's it. So that's all my speaking stuff coming up. I do have a couple of live streams scheduled or recordings scheduled coming up, and I've got to go back and check on those, but that'll be that. And then I won't do a Substack live this week, at least not on Thursday. If I do anything, presumably I might do a Substack live on Sunday afternoon or Sunday evening at some point. So just keep your eyes peeled for that. And if you guys want to jump on Substack, you can join for free. There's a free option. There's a paid option, whichever one that you want to do. I think that's it. Yeah, my book's coming out. I've got to get with the publisher. I think they're going to start printing here pretty soon. And so I would imagine by this time in August, that book will start being made available. And going forward to conferences, I'll probably carry a box of books with me wherever I go and kind of do it that way. So, all right. Thank you guys. God bless you. Maranatha. Just keep fighting the good fight. Don't give up. We're almost there. We're almost to the finish line. I know it seems like it's taken forever, but it's happening. The days go by slow, but the weeks go by fast and the months go by fast. So, all right. That said, I will see you guys next time.